So hi, I'm Christina Walker. I'm the Executive Director of Downtown on the Go. Very excited to have you all here today to kick off our Friday Forum series with a great topic about walkability and 20-minute neighborhoods. And Downtown on the Go is the transportation advocate and resource for downtown Tacoma. So we want to provide opportunities for you to do things like walking, biking, and taking transit. We also want to make sure you have opportunities to speak up in support of those things. And we are always advocating with our local city council, Pierce Transit, to make sure there are more options for transit, walkability, and bikeability. So keep in contact with us and find ways to speak up or let us know what you'd like to see. As I said, this is our first Friday Forum. There will be 4 in the series, the 4th Friday of every month starting now. And if you would sign in, I think Hallie's going to pass around the clipboard so we can get your name on the list so we can send you information about future Friday Forums. We are on Facebook and Twitter, so we do send out reminders there as well. We do enjoy putting on good community events. We want to make sure that those events are always free, but they of course are not free for us to put on. So we do have a donation box if you are so inclined on your way out to throw some money in there to help support our programs. And also, a big thank you to our corporate sponsors that you can see listed here, HMTB, AHBL, Geoengineers, Via Architects, and KPG all made the Friday Forum series happen. And of course, we could not do it without our host here at UW Tacoma for supporting us in the room space and IT support and everything. So thank you, James, for making that happen. With that, and as a teaser, I've got a book for you to read before next Friday Forum, but I'll talk about that at the very end. With that, I'll kick it over to Hallie. I'll let you know about our speakers.
All right. Hi, guys. I'm Hallie Burt. I'm a coordinator at Downtown on the Go. And today we're lucky to have Chris and Kim from Alta Planning to talk about 20-minute neighborhoods. And after that, we're going to have Peter from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department to talk about how 20-minute neighborhoods and more livable communities can be a benefit for our health. All right, so we're going to get started.
Great. Thanks. Hi there, everybody. My name is Chris Saliba. I work with Alta Planning and Design. I'm going to figure out how I get to this next.
Hallie, do you want to do the old switcheroo?
Yeah. Chris, do you want me
We're very high tech. We don't know.
Do you want me to introduce slides for you?
No, I can do it. Okay. Thanks. I'm going to keep it casual, keep it easy.
Love it.
Again, my name is Chris Saliba. I'm an associate with Alta Planning and Design. I'm a landscape architect, and I also have a master's in public health. The work that I do, I focus on designing active places and active transportation systems. I like to think that I integrate active transportation into urban planning and design as a public health tool. So that's the perspective that I bring to my work. Kim and I are going to talk about 20-minute neighborhoods. I'm going to give a little introduction, and Kim is going to then kind of segue and talk a little bit about kind of the specifics and how it is being applied in Tacoma. As some people in the room may know, or you might all know, about the concept of 20-minute neighborhoods, meaning focus on creating places for people to walk and bike to, really emphasizing making trips to destinations that are walkable and bikeable. I'd like to see a raise of hands to kind of, sorry, not a raise of hands, but just to kind of an image, getting ahead of myself a little bit, about what you imagine a 20-minute neighborhood to be like. What does that look like? What does that feel like? And specifically in Tacoma, what do you imagine to be a 20-minute neighborhood? So as we go through this presentation, kind of keep that in mind. I like this graphic as a way to kind of demonstrate the complexities in the relationship between the moving parts. And those moving parts really kind of focused on 3 primary elements, of density, looking at, destinations, density, oh my god, I just kind of blanked, excuse me for a second, and distance. And what I want to do is kind of walk through each of those and kind of give you kind of a sense and a perspective on what each kind of means in terms of a 20-minute neighborhood and how it relates. So on average, it takes about 20 minutes to walk between a quarter and a half a mile. So we start really kind of thinking about a 20-minute neighborhood as being not so much defined by a certain distance or radius, but that it's something that can be flexible and something that can be fluid depending on each person's individual ability to walk at different rates. So somebody that's older might have a smaller distance that they can walk. Somebody that walks at a brisker rate that might extend out to more of a mile distance. So thinking of this kind of element as 20 minutes being fluid, and it's kind of flexible and there's movement to it. Transportation options are one of the critical elements when we think about distance. And having access to a high quality and very convenient network of different options. So those options being able to walk and bike, being able to access metro, and that are both kind of regional and neighborhood based. Pedestrian access. I like to look at this image to kind of demonstrate how people adapt to the environments that they're in. But what this kind of speaks to is really getting at having pedestrian access that looks at connectivity, making sure and kind of looking at how we have a complete sidewalk network that's connected. So we've all seen the development that happens, and you get a sidewalk that goes for 2 blocks and it connects to nowhere. So making sure that network is completed. Making sure that we look at kind of the sidewalk and intersection density. So how often do we have intersections? And so typical, street blocks vary from 300 to 1,000 feet. So the smaller those neighborhood blocks are, the more intersections that we have, the more opportunities there are for kind of tactile interactions, for retail, for engaging with people. The other piece with access, and there's a story that is kind of relevant to me in my life, is that ADA ramps. So ADA ramps, especially in older neighborhoods, are kind of non-existent. Like they're very challenging. If we do have sidewalks, we still might have a 6-inch curb. My daughter is now 6, and when she was learning to ride a bike, we relied heavily on using sidewalks. So, and I never really thought about this as an obstacle, but as she was learning to ride, when she was around 3 or 4, we would use a sidewalk, and then we'd get to an intersection, and she'd have to maneuver down a 6-inch curve. And then she'd go to the other side of the street, and she would be maneuvering up a 6-inch curve. So you have this 3-year-old that's in the middle of the street. So it really kind of presented, what it said to me was that there are different obstacles that are presented with the lack of curb ramps for different people and different disabilities and or different ages. Kind of getting to my point, family-friendly facilities, and looking at how different types of infrastructure influence each other. But the point I want to talk about here with family-friendly facilities, and folks may have seen this slide, is talking about the user types. Who are we designing our neighborhoods for? So within our 20-minute neighborhoods, who are they for? And how are we accommodating and creating accessible routes for everybody that would like to get around? So folks might be familiar with Roger Geller's work and with Bikeability and the bike infrastructure that we're building out. And what this is getting at is we know that there are about 1% of the people that ride bikes right now will ride their bike anywhere. They'll be on an arterial in lane, not worried about it. And 7% of people that kind of getting a little bit cautious. This idea of no way, no how. I'm not riding anywhere. It doesn't matter what we do infrastructure-wise. But the target market is this interested but concerned. And when I channel that, for what that persona is, it looks like there's a multiple personality, multiple kind of user groups within that 60%. It's younger folks, it's older folks, it's families, it's people that are using bicycle facilities for transportation, for their everyday needs. Going to school, that's often with a kid, going to a grocery store, going to your parks. So it's being able to make connections and trips within your neighborhood. So what these facilities look like is, kind of to generalize, is more separation. That's one of our kind of rules of thumb, is the more separation we can create from the different user types, so creating more separation between cars and bikes creates a safer network. So it's moving away from an in-lane bike facility or traditional bike lane with no separation or a buffer between bikes and cars. Destinations. As I was alluding to, parks. So having rich experiences within our neighborhoods doesn't necessarily always mean that we have to have dedicated parks. We can have schools with playgrounds. We can have kind of impromptu opportunities for play on sidewalks. So really kind of blowing up the idea of what play means, and to not feel like we need to be so rigid about what that looks like. A lot of my work has been in playground design, and there's often constraints there as well, given the guidelines around what play is and what it can be. So really trying to think about how can we create access to play. In my front yard, I have a 9-foot planting strip, and I have a little cherry tree. So I hung up a swing for my daughter, and this other unintended great kind of discovery is that the neighborhood kids love to use it. So we can find play in other ways. Or in all ways, I want to say. Access to healthy food is really important. So being able to make a trip without a car to your grocery store, to the restaurant, to retail, whatever that might be. And so looking at ways for how can we kind of ensure that, one, the food outlets that are in our neighborhoods are serving high quality food, and then that there are safe and convenient ways to get there through multiple modes. Employment centers. I've been thinking a lot about this one as I was putting this presentation together. And I'm sorry to keep bringing it back to me, but I think going through it as a user, I'm kind of challenging some of these concepts of 20-minute neighborhood and what it means for different people. And that's why I want you to be thinking about what yours is. Is that, I live in a neighborhood where I can walk or bike to most things within 20 minutes. And then I get on the bus and I go to downtown Seattle to go to my office. That's 20 minutes away. So it's this idea of having dense employers potentially, within your own 20-minute walkable, bikeable walk shed. But it also means you can go to other ones, right? And how do you move between them? And that movement is dependent on the transit options. But then also really kind of thinking about how we aggregate and kind of put together employment centers, and if they are in concentrated areas, how do we be more fluid with how that's part of our 20-minute neighborhood system? I'm going to hurry up because I'm a little bit behind. End-of-trip facilities, really thinking about, okay, let's get people to our destinations, but making sure we have the type of infrastructure there that allows people to use, to say, lock their bike up easily. Density. We're going to talk about density of housing units. Research really kind of pointing to what the typology of the housing stock is, and really honing in on this townhouses. It doesn't need to be townhouses, but more the metric of 12 to 15 units an acre. It's kind of that target range some of the research is pointing to of what a 20-minute neighborhood looks like. Having various types of housing and mixed of uses. So, retail on the ground floor, residential above. Benefits. A traditional kind of model of thinking about housing costs is about 30% of your median income being allocated towards housing. The Center for Neighborhood Technology is a group that aggregates data and puts out desktop data tools on how to rethink about what our expenses of living. So I'm going to walk you through this. So the CNT says, kind of points to research around 30% of your median income is a comfortable amount to go towards your housing. And then they also say, but transportation is a cost that we should be really considering about that cost of living relative to where you live. And so the number they put on that is 15%. So what they're kind of getting at is that there's a 45% of your income going towards housing and transportation. The numbers that CNT puts out there for Tacoma is that it's about, people are spending about 43% of their income on housing and transportation. And what I think is interesting is, to break it down, the housing is a little bit low. It's about 25%, but the transportation is a little bit high. So they're under this 45% kind of threshold, but is there an opportunity to potentially reduce the expense of cost of living even more? And where I want to go in with that is on the transportation side, with the average American spending over an hour and a half, or almost 2 hours in the car. And what does that look like from the cost side of things? Well, that transportation cost at top is the average annual amount folks in this area are spending on transportation. And what they say, breaking that down a little bit, that of that 12,000, 11,500 is directly related to automobile ownership. So the delta there, about $1,500, is what the cost that people are spending on transit. So if you could potentially reduce the dependency on the automobile and have a reduction, say $10,000 to $11,000 a year, that will then start bringing down that 18% part of the housing plus transportation index. So long story short, there's a cost benefit. The 20-minute complete neighborhood concept puts a high value on taking out the motor vehicle trip entirely and focusing on the mile not driven. Health benefits, achieving our daily recommended amount of physical activity. Safety, I'll quickly go through this one. Folks may know that the faster our street speeds are, the higher likelihood of morbidity and mortality. So we're really aiming getting our speeds lower, and that target speed is 20 miles an hour. So at 40 miles an hour, 1 out of 10 pedestrians survive a collision with an automobile. At 30 miles an hour, 5 out of 10 pedestrians survive. And at 20 miles an hour, 9 out of 10 survive. So speed is critical. Environmental impacts, the social benefits of a small condensed neighborhood is we run into each other. We see each other in the street. We go to the same grocery stores, so we get to know each other. We see each other, and it creates and strengthens social cohesion. And some of the challenges are looking at how to maintain that walk and bike quality across networks, retrofitting our neighborhoods, so thinking back to the curb ramp examples. Curb ramps are expensive, and the cost with that. So ballpark, it ranges around $10,000 a curb ramp. So in understanding what amenities people want in their neighborhood. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Kim, and she's going to talk a little bit about how all this kind of folds in and relates to the work kind of happening in Tacoma.
Thanks.
Thanks.
So apologies first off if I start coughing. I have the cold that everyone has. I'm not contagious, I promise. I'm Kim. I'm with Alta, and I work as a planner and GIS analyst. So I like active transportation, and I really like GIS. So this is really a perfect place for me. I've been working in Tacoma for, probably 4 or 5 years off and on. So it's been really fun to work on some of the projects here and see the 20-minute neighborhood becoming embedded in everything that's happening here. Some of you I know are familiar with transportation planning policy, but raise your hand if you've heard of MOMAP. Okay. Transportation Master Plan? Okay. By the way, I just wanted to shout out that some of the people in the room are very familiar with MOMAP, and we're on BP tag, so if I get anything wrong or you want to add anything, just shout it out. So this is one of the policies, specifically the 20-minute neighborhood policy, which made its way into the Transportation Master Plan. And it's specifically calling out 20-minute neighborhoods are a recognized concept in Tacoma, and there's a desire to use this as policy framework to really concentrate growth and investment to make great places where people want to walk and bike and live. PSRC, show of hands, familiarity? Puget Sound Regional Council. And if I believe 60% of the growth for Tacoma is targeted for mixed-use centers, which we're going to be talking about in just a minute here. So, you know, that's a lot of people. And thinking about how and where to put them, it's, you know, if you plan for those people, it's easier to build with a little bit of conscious thought these places that are great with curb ramps that we can walk, that we can walk, that people can play. This is one of the pages from the Mobility Master Plan, which was published in 2011. And I'm just pointing out here that Tacoma's been thinking about prioritizing bikes and pedestrians and public transit and freight for a long time. And this is the transportation hierarchy. It's a little bit hard to see from the back, but single occupancy vehicles are on the bottom. Your most vulnerable users, pedestrians, are up at the top there. So, you know, Transportation Master Plan was completed in November, I believe, and there is a copy that's been printed that is available through your office. If you want to take a look at it later and all, it's
Good read.
90 pages of glory. One of the things that I really like that has come out of the plan is the way that pedestrians are thought about in this really, really thoughtful manner, and it's MOMAP was really all about bikes, and there was a desire from the Transportation Planning Department and walking and cycling interests to think about pedestrians in a thoughtful way. The framework that everyone has landed on really is the 20-minute neighborhood. And interestingly enough, when searching for the history of the 20-minute neighborhood, it looks like, again, our friend Roger Geller in the city of Portland might have pioneered this idea. At least those are some of the earliest documents I can find. But I've run across references to 20-minute neighborhoods in Phoenix and in Eugene and a couple of other cities. But it was really a hot concept maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and a little bit less so now. But I'm really excited to see it here in the city of Tacoma. And I think it's a really useful framework because we all talk about walkable, cyclable cities and try and describe it in a lot of words. It's like really the 20-minute neighborhood is an elegant way to frame that up in my mind. So, jumping back to this page for just a minute, this is the finished product that went into the Transportation Master Plan, and now I'm going to show you some of the maps that are a little bit less pretty that we did some of the analysis in to look at the city of Tacoma from this lens and say, well, what is, you know, is Tacoma? I'm just trying to think of the words. It's like, is Tacoma already a 20-minute city, 20-minute neighborhoods? Is it already a city of 20-minute neighborhoods? Or do we have some growing left to do? And where does that growth need to happen as far as thinking about density and distance and destinations? So density is the first metric here we're taking a look at. This is a heat map that looks at population density based on a census block group for 2010. And we also did look at future population density based on data from Puget Sound Regional Center for 2030. I don't have that slide to show you. We did overlay that with the mixed-use centers that have already been designated by the city of Tacoma as the places where that growth is to be focused. And we were thinking, you know, are we there yet? Which of our centers are there yet? And where do those changes need to take place? So, Tacoma Mall sub-area. We were just looking. This is one of the places we settled on as a case study, is Tacoma Mall. I know there's a lot of redevelopment planned for the area. And we see right now there's density in the southwestern corner. That had always been part of the master plan, is to have a grocery store.
It's just you have to have the population for them to come. They want 20 to 40,000.
Marguerite.
I think it's interesting when you say that the first thing you said was we need more people, because I'm doing this blog right now that's like trying to get people to move to Tacoma, and I get a lot of pushback from locals saying, no, we don't want people to move to Tacoma because then our rents are going to go up and our housing prices are going to go up. So I'm trying to strike this balance between, well, we want people to come here, but where do we want them to go? And so it's not just, I mean, when I think of the Dome District in particular, it's like we almost need to like make sure there's places for people to live there so that it's worth it to bring the services. And like that's kind of the, when we talk about 20-minute neighborhoods, like where are people going to live? And do you want people to live in other people's neighborhoods or do you want them to live in your neighborhood? And like, how do we have this conversation without everybody freaking out? Like, that's what I'm really wanting to learn.
Right.
Did you want to respond to that before we, or?
I was going to say that with respect to the Dome District not being one of the districts we analyzed, we used the districts that had been previously recognized by the city. So,
Thank you.
just clarifying where those came from.
Yeah.
I think what Jory's saying about people dispersing into the county and what you're saying about, Tacoma is not necessarily mutually exclusive. I think that the resistance to people moving to Tacoma is we don't want to become the next Seattle suburb.
Yep.
And what I hear Jory saying, I think really complements what our transportation costs are higher in Tacoma. They're like supposed to be around 15%, but they're about 18%. And so it's really important to help people understand what options are available so that we can show the value of living in a dense neighborhood and not drive until we qualify and live out in the county where we can live cheap, but then make up that rent that we're not paying in gas and car insurance and all of these other hidden costs. So I don't know.
You want to do your maps?
Well, I would just say,
% change in load share in the target area, and that generally persists. But those programs take time and effort. So I know that Seattle, which is where I'm most familiar with the programs, targets neighborhoods annually. The city of Portland tries to make sure that a neighborhood is targeted once every 10 years, I believe, which is
Locally, we're currently doing Hilltop in motion, and last year was Stadium in motion. So we've got some of those things going. Peter, why don't you get set up, because I want to make sure we don't miss yours, but you can keep
I was going to say, if I
talking.
remember correctly, we've worked with you on some of
On
those
the Stadium one,
programs.
yeah. So we're always open to new ideas, but that's a big part of our work too, is creating those incentives for people to get out of their cars, for sure.
But again, it's interesting how you go to a lot of the businesses downtown to live downtown, and there's nowhere for them to live. And that's the other issue to me, is that we can't even get developers to come here to build. I mean, it's
It's a complicated.
it's amazing, and so we don't have the housing downtown, and we
Which
need
you
that
need.
housing downtown
Yeah.
because the downtown needs housing.
Feels like that's changing. I feel like there's a lot
Well,
coming up.
we seem sort of on the cusp, as
On
we
the
were
cusp.
about 8 years ago.
Coming back around.
Be nice.
Any other comments before we get Peter going, and then we can keep talking? Okay, take it away.
Very good. My name is Peter Anderson. I'm representing the Health Department, and I'm very excited to talk to you today about the health implications that come with increasing the amount of your active transportation within your 20-minute neighborhoods. I don't want this talk to be accusatory or feel like a chastisement of the personal behaviors that you're choosing, but I want it to be a source of encouragement and that we could encourage each other together. This is a safe place. Let's talk about health as neighbors who are providing a social support for each other. So, probably everybody in this room is already very active, and that's good. I love it. Keep it up. But I want you to realize that you do influence those who are around you. And if you have friends, or if anybody in this room feels like being active more in their neighborhood could be overwhelming, let's talk about some barriers, but also the important reasons to be physically active. So, as we talk about active transportation, on the slide I have walking behavior down here at the bottom, but it could be any form of active transportation within your neighborhood. Maybe skateboarding, riding your bicycle, maybe even pushing a wheelchair around. But we've got our walking behavior, and we can see that it is determined by the intention to walk. once again, I haven't said this already, but this is a theory of planned behavior, so we'll talk about our decisions and our behaviors that we're making within this framework. So we've got our behavior, walking behavior, with the intention to walk, and we'll see that there are 3 predictors for that intention to walk. So intention to walk would be your readiness. Do you feel ready to do this? So it's based off of your attitudes about walking, the subjective norms about walking, and the perceived behavioral control about walking. So when we talk about attitudes with walking, those are based off of the beliefs that you may have about the consequences of walking. So today I'm going to talk about some of the positive consequences of walking, and that'll either reinforce your beliefs or maybe it will challenge your beliefs. Moving on, talking about the subjective norms of walking, this deals with the beliefs that you have about the normality of it. Do people within your neighborhood, do they move around actively? Is this something that even happens? Or is there a culture where you are judged if you're not using your status symbol of your car as you drive around? Another thing that could fit into this would be, so I am married to a woman who's, she encourages me to be active. She wants me to be more active, and because I value her opinion of me, I feel that there's more of a draw, there's more of an expectation to be active. So that's one of the things that can work on our intentions to be active. And lastly, we have the perceived behavior control of walking. So this deals with your capability to walk. Do you have shoes that will allow you to walk down the sidewalk? Do you live in a neighborhood that actually has those sidewalks that Chris was talking about that are connected? If they aren't there, maybe you feel like we don't have the ability to walk. This could also come from, I'll give you an example. So I've got a great attitude about walking. I believe that it's healthy for me. I want to do it. I walk around in my neighborhood and I'm getting high fives all the time. Everybody's encouraging. It's a great social environment for walking. But let's see, I've got a need. I want to go buy some milk at the grocery store, but the grocery store is 30 miles away. I'm probably going to feel like I don't have the strength to be active to get down to that store. So that's going to work on my the efficacy, my capability. Do I believe I'm able to do it? So what is so good about being active? I'm sure everybody knows, but let's encourage those around us. What's so good about being active? Why does the health department even care about this? Well, let me tell you. Over the past 100 years, the major causes of death has shifted away from communicable diseases to chronic diseases. We're finding that 7 out of 10 of the leading causes of death are these chronic diseases, things like cancer or cardiovascular disease. And when we talk about your overall health risk, you can see that the risk is grouped into 3 categories. We've got our inherited and biological category, the environmental risks, and the behavioral risks that you are choosing. Within the inherited and the biological, you'll see that there's an increased risk from certain things like your age, gender, and race. These are things that you can't change, but they're very important to be aware of. Next, we have the environmental risks. And this one, you can see it kind of fits a little bit more into your 20-minute neighborhood. So this would be things like the physical environment, the socioeconomic environment, and your social environment. Probably the easiest one to see within this would be your physical environment. This would be something like, say, across the street, we've got the methanol factory, which has exploded, and there's fumes going into the air. As you are exposed to that over time, that is going to be a health risk to you. Also, this is connected more with if you are driving less and you're walking more, there's going to be less cars on the street, putting those particulates into the air, which will slowly over time cause an increase in risk. Moving on, there's the socioeconomic and social factors, which are a little bit more difficult to see. My colleague Jacques Cologne gave a speech or a talk at the Friday Forums last summer. I really highly recommend looking into that. He was talking about health equity. This would be like, who is actually able to afford that house in a 20-minute neighborhood? Not everybody. So something to think about. I'm not going to focus on that right now. I recommend looking into it, though. So we'll see that as you go through all of these categories, it's not one in and of itself which is adding to that overall health risk, but it's the combination and the snowball over time. And they do work together. So last we have the behavioral risks. And at the top, I'm not going to talk to you about not smoking. I don't want anybody to smoke, but we're going to talk about, we'll see that there is that behavioral risk of poor nutrition mixed with physical inactivity, which leads to a systemic inflammation within your tissues, your blood vessels, followed by cardiovascular disease. So this is, we're getting into it. This is a lot of information, so let's go through it. So the health department is calling for an increase in physical activity, and that will be perfect for you within your 20-minute neighborhood to look at being more active. Because we are seeing that exercise decreases the systemic inflammation within your body. So how much activity? I'm glad you asked. The CDC has released recommendations for activity, regular physical activity. At the top, they're in the boxes here. At the top you can see that there are a recommendation for 2 days a week of muscle strengthening. But there's also, the bottom two are talking about aerobic activity. The middle one is, they recommend 1.25 hours per week of vigorous intensity or 2.5 hours per week of moderate intensity. Now, intensity is talking about how hard is your body working. An example would be, the vigorous intensity would be riding your bicycle very quickly or very hard. Moderate intensity is just walking down the sidewalk briskly to go to your store, maybe. So, it seems overwhelming, 2.5 hours per week, maybe that's overwhelming, but we'll see that if you are doing that 20-minute walk in your neighborhood once a day, you are getting very close to that 2.5 hours per week recommendation. So, I want you to realize, and I want you to let your friends know, that your bodies are powerful machines. The muscles in your bodies can work quite effectively to get you to the store. You don't need to drive if you don't want to. You have 600 muscles within your body, which account for about half of your body weight. How do they do it? How do they get you to the store? Well, your body has a constant cellular activity, but when you are being physically active, the contraction of your muscles actually uses energy that's called high energy phosphates, ATP. I'm going to take you back to science class in high school. Most cells in your body have this mitochondrial organelle inside of them, which synthesizes, creates this ATP, this high energy phosphate that moves your body, and it synthesizes it from carbohydrates, fat, and proteins, things that you eat daily. So the amount that each one of those contributes to your physical activity depends on your diet, your intensity of your activity, the duration of your activity, whether or not you are endurance trained. An example would be low intensity activity uses mostly fats as a fuel, and high intensity uses mostly carbohydrates. So we know that not only does your activity burn these sources of fuel in your body, but it also makes your body function better. It will pump the blood back up to your heart and your lungs, which will send that blood to your muscles, which is needing more oxygen, and so your heart is working harder, pumping more to get that oxygen to you, because within that aerobic activity, walking within your 20-minute neighborhoods, you need that oxygen to turn those fuel sources into the ATP, the high energy phosphate. So as your body is working harder and your heart is working harder, that's good. You can actually lead to your body adapting and getting better at that activity through the overload principle. When a tissue or system within your body works at a level that's higher than it's used to, it can actually adapt. And this will lead to an increase in capillary supply to your muscles, increase in the mitochondria, those things I was talking about, which uses the fuel source and turns it into energy. You'll have more of them, so you'll be more efficient at burning that energy. You can enhance your brain health. You can do better with learning and memory. They're showing that activity actually increases the amount of brain cell growth within your brain. You're not limited to a certain amount. You can actually increase that through your activity. And the number one, the ding, 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 the big thing to remember is that being active within your neighborhood decreases the systemic inflammation within your body, lowering that risk for cardiovascular chronic diseases. So, everybody's really excited, and they're going to try and encourage their friends to be more active within their neighborhood, but I want you to think about safety. Remember the old adage, walk before you run? Don't drastically increase your physical activity Don't tell your friends to drastically increase. I would recommend you have a conversation with a physician about your health history. If you would please check out some safety tips online. Petbikeinfo.org is a great source. If anybody has questions about walkability or is interested in starting walking groups within your neighborhood to increase that social support for walking, please check out our site, the health department /walkability. Thanks very much for listening.
So let's give a round of applause for all of our speakers for today. I think it's really important that we start thinking about and making those coalitions between health and equity and walkability and these 20-minute neighborhoods. So if we want to see the changes in Tacoma that some of us hope to see, all of us hope to see, that can all take place. So thank you guys so much for connecting those for us today. If anyone else has any other questions, there are a few minutes left. We do want to remind you guys about our next Friday Forum and book club that I think Christine wants to mention.
This book, I hate to say it, but it actually is a fun read. It's called Making Transit Fun. It's a short one. It's online. We got special permission from the author to print a couple copies, so if you'd like to check one out from us, you can have the hard one. Otherwise, it's available on Amazon for like $3, I think, $3.50? $3.99, and Google Play, so you can get it on your device and read it on the bus. Great read. Highly recommend it. Whether you read it or not, come to our next Friday Forum, February 26th. The author, Darren Nordahl, will be here to lead the discussion with us. We're really excited to have him here and discuss about ways we can encourage more folks to get on transit. And this is not just a transit book. It's about connecting to transit via walkability and bikeability. So it fits within all of those. If this conversation or the conversation we're going to have in the next couple of minutes inspires you to speak up for something in Tacoma, like a downtown grocery store or more residential density or better policies that encourage people to move to downtown Tacoma rather than the county, please come to our next event on February 2nd, which is a how to speak up for biking, walking, and transit. It's an hour-long training to help you find the right place to speak up, whether that's your local city council, county council, and to discuss with other folks who might want to speak up about the same thing. If you're a pro at speaking up, go do it. Speak up at city council. Every second Tuesday they hear from the community. Every second Tuesday anyone can speak up on anything they have jurisdiction over. So every second Tuesday go to city council and speak up for walking, biking, and transit, and contact us if you have any questions or you can't make it to the event. And with that, I'll shut up so we can keep talking.
Are you going to explain the activity?
Well, yeah, so like I mentioned, the maps, we have, there's a sticker on the back that, and then there's little stickers, so that you can pick the map where you live, work, or visit frequently, and use the smaller stickers to identify where you live, where you can get groceries, where a school is, where entertainment is, and then place those stickers on the map to remind yourself of the 20-minute neighborhood that you live in, or realize what gaps that might be. And if you are inspired, like Christina said, to change that, learn more about speaking up at council on February 2nd. But yeah, it's an exercise to sort of figure out what these areas, what are these 20-minute neighborhoods in Tacoma, where are they, what do they look like downtown, and what are the components of a 20-minute neighborhood that are most important to you. So if you need more stickers or more maps, let us know. Yeah. Did you have any questions about that or anything else that was, yeah?
Are these colored in such a way that you put different ones?
You can just follow your heart on what was
Okay. No, we're not handing this in.
Yes, no, oh no, this is for you, yes.
Real quick, so workplace walk, like lunch walk, or you take your breaks and you walk with your colleagues. I find it really effective, as that's what we have been doing at the health department. At every lunchtime, we have half an hour for lunch, and then we don't take breaks, so we cram it into another half hour for walking. So it's really relieve the stress and get your blood circulated and oxygen to the brain and to energize you. So I highly recommend it. You can form a group within your workplace and start walking, provided that the neighborhoods are better at more walkability.
And if you don't want to do that alone, come to one of our walk events. They start April 6th, every first Wednesday. And I think Peter mentioned that we're all influenced by the people around us. So every time you do a walking meeting or walk with your friends, that makes a difference. That makes our community feel more walkable, because there's always a perception that you can't walk because of one reason or another. But if there are people out there walking, you can visualize it. So thank you for that comment.
Like high five.
Hannah, did you have something else?
Yeah, I thought the safety graphic you used in your presentation was awesome. We were oohing and awing over it, and I was wondering if it's possible to use the speed and safety. If you could provide a source, or is it available for reuse?
That's a pretty common graphic. We redesigned it, but that's something that
We can share
probably pretty sure we can share that. Yeah, but it is something that is accessible, like the information on it. Yeah.
It's just really well formatted.
Thank you.
So I have a question if nobody else does. I don't want to steal the show. But I was really curious with your density maps. You can see the city's designated mixed-use centers. And this is kind of a question for the group. Most of them had a little bit of red in them. Downtown, I was pleased to see, had a little bit of red in it. The Proctor district didn't have any red in it. And in my mind, that's a very walkable neighborhood. And I don't live in the neighborhood, but I often walk to those grocery stores and those places. So I wanted, with the controversy of adding the big, dense units there, I thought that was a really interesting map. So.
Well, I think one of the problems with that map is that the outlines of those areas are for the commercial district. And we don't have this concept in our minds, as is the United States right now, that you live where you work or on top of your business like we used to long ago. And so the circle of the 20-minute is much bigger than that, and that's what you're talking about, I think. And so the circle of 20 minutes to get to that commercial district. But I think what the city is looking at now is trying to densify that commercial district with word meaning densification means housing. And so it's trying to get housing into those areas. But you're right, I mean, even the downtown, I mean, really had basically no red. You know, it's pretty sad. Yeah, that was a big area.
We have talked about the importance of a grocery store.
Yeah.
Whose responsibility is that? You know, is that a transportation thing, or is that like whose table does that sit on? Or because I think I hear that often.
Yeah, agreed.
Downtown
Agreed.
need a grocery store or grocery stores. But I'm just curious if anyone has a feel for who should be pushing for that.
I need to be the one talking about this.
Sure.
I deal with these issues all the time. It seems like always. Anyway, so it's really economic development department, in a sense. But if you talk to them about it, they're like, well, it's up to the company if they want to be here. Well, they don't seem to want to entice them to come. And right now, I really think that the economic development department needs to step forward and work with these different, like Safeway or whoever they all are, to figure out why it is that they're consolidating and why we can't have them within the neighborhoods anymore. And I think that's an issue.
Margaret has a burning question.
I know. I don't have that question. It's just more of a thing about the grocery store thing. And like, this is just my opinion. But like, the stories we tell about our neighborhoods to people in our neighborhoods and outside, like, people believe you. So if you're saying, oh, we really need a grocery store for this neighborhood to come together, like, everyone's going to feel, oh, this is going to sound so hippie-dippy, but like, lack. And, you know, people want to invest in neighborhoods that are happening. Everybody wants to think they have a line on, like, the next great thing. And the more you say, like, oh, it's never going to come together until we get a grocery store, like, spend money in your neighborhood. Like, that's what you have to do. We had a grocery store, and I mean, the business model was effed, and it was never going to work the way that they had it. But like, everybody's just going to point to that and be like, oh, well, downtown can't support a grocery store. And every time a business closes in Tacoma, don't post on your Facebook, oh, you know, Tacoma can't even support an Italian restaurant. Like, it's not true. Like, you have to be able to have the business make sense in the space. They have to have a good lease. Like, they have to have enough square footage to stock enough stuff that you have enough variety that people actually want to shop there instead of driving to Proctor or whatever. Like, but we have to tell better stories about the places that we live. I think this is really crucial to enticing, because economic development, I mean, I don't know those guys very well, but I don't know how well they're telling our story. So if they're not telling it right, like, we have to take responsibility for telling it better. And that's just a little thing, I think. About gracious dreams.
I think that's a great perspective, and really also thinking about, we have this ideal of all these elements, all these amenities that we have and that we want in our 20-minute neighborhood, but if they're not all there right now, how do you work towards that, right? Or like identifying those things. But if you need to get in your car and drive to the grocery store, like, okay, right? But you have all these other things too, right? So what is that balance between what is working, what is great, and then how do you, I like that, like building momentum towards something, and also looking for other models of other types of grocery stores that are interested in kind of filling in the gaps.
Yeah, the co-ops operate out of a mini mart. Like, and they're doing great.
Yeah. How old is Tacoma's comp plan? I have to admit I don't know that, but I know that there is a drive, from a policy perspective, to engage and have more public health related initiatives come as a part of those comprehensive plans in future rounds. So that would be another place to get that policy embedded.
I know there are planners working on this at the health department, actually. Yeah. So, all right. I don't want. Go ahead.
So I was just going to say, I can tell you that they update their comprehensive plan. They update pieces of it every year, and they're actually right now working on. They really took a big picture look at the whole thing in 2015, and it's rolling into 2016.
Okay, got it.
So this is actually a good time to approach them and say, hey, we're really concerned. I know you're working on this right now. We would like to add X, Y, Z. So it is.
Great.
Thank
you for that.
Vision 2040, and they had a bunch of workshops.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure they're all done now.
Right.
That
But
was,
you
yes,
can
you can
still
definitely.
comment.
Yeah.
You can still
Yep.
go to the meetings and the planning commission meetings.
And I don't want to let us go too far over, but I know people will stick around and chit chat. I will say again, please use us as a resource to get the word out. Let's form some collaborative approaches to speaking up for some of these things so that we can tell City Council what we would like to see. I think this is really important. And I do sit on that vision, Tacoma's Vision stakeholder group, so I have a voice there. So as many people give me comments, I will bring those to the city. So.
And just one more thing,
Yeah.
on their planning, on their city website, under their planning, they have all those documents, so you can read them and see what's been happening in the last couple of years or even more, but there's very specifically a whole page that's dedicated to the comprehensive plan.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming. Thank you to our speakers and to our sponsors and to UWT for hosting us. Grab your maps at the end and make sure you sign in. We'll send you info.